15 years, a dark force stirs from beneath the earth, unleashing a horde of terrifying creatures upon the world. These monsters, driven by a primal instinct to destroy, sweep across the land, decimating cities and reducing humanity to a state of constant fear and desperation. Humanity has tried to fight back, but the monsters are relentless, forcing people to hide and survive by any means necessary. The film begins by recounting the horrors of the so-called First Reckoning. From the depths of the earth and the darkest corners of the mind, legions of nightmarish creatures emerged. They slaughtered millions, leveled cities, and plunged the world into chaos. A fierce war ensued, with humanity desperately battling these creatures. Eventually, the monsters were driven back, but at a great cost. In the aftermath, fortified barriers were erected over the monstrous wells designed to keep humanity safe from another invasion. 15 years have passed since that harrowing time, and the world has begun to heal, though the scars remain. Laura, one of the few who survived the First Reckoning, has managed to rebuild her life. She now works as a teacher, trying to provide a sense of normalcy for the next generation. She's pursued by Milton, a persistent but unsuccessful suitor who she continually rebuffs. Her heart still bears the wounds left by her ex-husband Dave. On the day of the First Reckoning, Dave was nowhere to be found, leaving Laura pregnant to fend for herself. Together, they have a 15-year-old son, Tyler. Tyler, like many his age, spends his days at the skate park with his friends and his girlfriend, Maddie. In his spare time, he immerses himself in video games, a brief escape from the tension between his estranged parents. As the story progresses, the atmosphere begins to shift. An eclipse is drawing near, one of the ominous signs that another reckoning might be on the horizon. Seismic activity increases, prompting emergency inspections of the protective domes. The news is filled with unsettling reports. Mass fish die-offs are being recorded across the globe, echoing the events that preceded the First Reckoning. People begin to fear the worst, as history seems poised to repeat itself. Tyler is spending the weekend at his father's house when Dave receives a frantic call from his old friend Ted. Ted is convinced that the Second Reckoning is imminent and urges Dave to take his family to his shelter before the eclipse begins. Meanwhile, under the protective dome, a silent terror lurks as the first monster slips inside, stalking the stairwells undetected. Laura, having seen the same ominous news reports, demands that Dave bring Tyler back to her. Milton has already secured a spot in a shelter, and she believes it's their only hope for survival. Dave reassures her that Tyler is safe with him, but as they argue, Tyler receives a message and slips out of the house unnoticed. Laura, gripped by panic, insists that Dave bring Tyler to her immediately. Reluctantly, Dave agrees, but when he goes to fetch Tyler, he finds the boy gone. Desperate, Milton uses his phone's tracking app to locate Tyler at the skate park, where he's with Maddie. Maddie is anxious, abandoned by her own parents, and pleads with Tyler not to leave her. Tyler, determined not to repeat his father's mistakes, promises Maddie that he won't leave her side. Suddenly, the sky darkens as flocks of birds fly overhead, fleeing in terror. The park descends into chaos as people scramble to escape the city. Dave races to the skate park, abandoning his car in the traffic jam to find his son. Meanwhile, under the dome, a worker checks the instruments, oblivious to the lurking danger. A monster attacks, tearing him apart, and the soldiers nearby are powerless to stop it. Tyler and Maddie witness the unfolding horror, frozen in fear as the city descends into panic. Dave arrives just in time to hear Tyler's explanation. Maddie has nowhere to go, and he couldn't abandon her. Laura and Milton pull up, and they all pile into the car, racing against time to reach the shelter before the eclipse. The city is in turmoil, with traffic jams choking the streets and people fleeing in all directions. They finally reach the shelter, but it's surrounded by military personnel who are only allowing women and children inside. Dave tells Tyler to look after his mother and sends them in, but Tyler refuses to leave his father. Laura and Maddie follow Tyler as he runs back to his dad, shouting that he won't abandon him. At that moment, the shelter reaches capacity and the doors close. With no other options, they rush back to the car. Dave suggests heading to Ted's shelter in the desert, while Milton argues that the school's basement nearby would be a safer bet. Caught in another traffic jam, they're forced to abandon the car just as an earthquake strikes, and the eclipse begins. Under the dome, the monsters surge forth, overwhelming the city. Dave urges them to leave the city, but Milton insists on driving, claiming he knows how to save them all. As they argue, a flying monster snatches Milton, lifting him into the sky. Laura screams as Dave forces her into the car, and they speed away from the carnage. They drive along the canal, with Dave trying to reassure the children that they'll make it out alive. But as the gas gauge nears empty, Dave searches for a replacement vehicle. He finds one nearby, but an elderly man is hiding in the back seat. The old man glances at a massive, bloodied creature resembling a skeletal bull nearby. The bull, oblivious to them, feasts on a corpse. Dave carefully rolls the car back to Laura and the kids, but the bull notices them. The old man steps out of the car, sprinkling salt from a jar onto the bull, momentarily halting it and allowing Laura and the children to escape into Dave's car. The bull then charges at the old man, tearing him apart as Dave speeds away. Monsters swarm the city as Dave navigates an abandoned mountain road. They finally reach Ted's hideout, a fortified bunker that appears secure. Cameras are mounted on the roof, but no one responds to their knocking. Inside, Ted watches the monitors, a gun pressed to his neck by an unseen figure. Outside, the monsters approach in a frenzied herd. Dave grabs a tire iron, preparing to defend his family. At the last moment, the bunker doors swing open and they rush inside. Dave embraces Ted, relieved to be safe. Ted's wife Stella and a stern-looking soldier named Corporal Garrett Jensen are also inside. On the monitors, the monsters are seen attacking the bunker. Everyone is tense, especially Garrett, who remains aloof. Maddie nervously asks how the monsters can sense them. Can they see through the walls? Garrett smirks and replies that they react to light and heat, but he believes they can sense something deeper, something within their souls. Garrett, seemingly religious, recounts how he survived the first reckoning by hiding in a pond of salty mud at a refinery. The monsters, he claims, are the devil's spawn, tormenting the flesh and feeding on the soul. Laura, skeptical, asks if he's always been this devout. Garrett responds that on days like these, faith becomes a necessity. He continues his story, vividly recalling the monsters, massacring his 150 co-workers while he cowered in the mud, listening to their screams. Garrett is so engrossed in his tale that he doesn't notice Ted signaling Dave to take the knife. Dave quietly reaches for it, understanding Ted's plan. Garrett, oblivious, continues his ominous monologue, declaring that these creatures are the harbingers of the apocalypse. Suddenly, A creature resembling a giant centipede slips through a small hole in the window's mesh. Garrett announces that he'll take the first watch, while Ted subtly gestures for Dave to stay alert. But Garrett, sensing the tension, draws his gun, forcing Dave to drop the knife. Garrett reveals that he stumbled upon this bunker after the first reckoning. Stella let him in, despite Ted's objections. Garrett has survived once and intends to do so again, no matter the cost. As tensions rise, Tyler leaps at Garrett, trying to wrestle the gun from him. Garrett easily overpowers the boy, tossing him aside. Suddenly, the centipede-like monster attacks Stella. Ted rips it off her and douses it with salt, disintegrating the creature. Dave seizes the opportunity to grab the gun and subdue Garrett. They bind Garrett and tend to Stella's wounds, but the situation is dire. Outside, a monstrous bull-like creature charges at the bunker doors. Dave realizes they need to escape before the doors give way. Ted is reluctant to leave, fearing Stella won't survive the journey, but she insists they go, revealing a hidden underground passage that leads into the mountains. Garrett pleads to be taken along, claiming he has a car with a full tank of gas that can get them to the gate where the creatures originated. He insists they won't return to that spot, as they've already emerged. Despite their doubts, the group decides to take him with them. They arm themselves with weapons from Ted's arsenal and make a run for the tunnel just as the bull begins to breach the doors. They reach Garrett's car, but Stella's condition worsens, sparking an argument between Dave and Laura. Tyler spots a dead monster nearby, and as Maddie approaches it, the creature